Alright guys, I am DJ Swag and this is Classic Music Machine. And I'm sorry I'm sweating a little bit. This is my very first video that I've ever uploaded on YouTube. My wife is a way girl. Go find her, subscribe to her. But occasionally we'll do music videos or videos regarding album reviews, things like that on her channel. But as things kind of evolved and we started getting into stuff more and more, I decided to start my own channel. So again, this is the very first video of DJ Swag and the Classic Music Machine. On one of those earlier videos with her, we reviewed, it was influential albums, basically influential albums of I think the 70s and 80s. And one of the commenters in the comment section, they made a comment that, hey, great bands, great picks, great information, but it was all men. It was all male bands, and it was something that I was like, man, I didn't even realize that. And so what we're doing today is we wanted to do some quick, kind of a quick top 10 of influential female artists or influential female bands that had an impression on me. And so we're just going to jump right into it. Again, this is the first video, so I'm a little bit green at this. But number one is going to be, and I've kind of done this in kind of a timeline, starting from earliest and going to latest. One thing I do want to mention is this was kind of difficult because there are several artists, Joan Baez, Sade. Those are two that come to mind. The Pretenders, Chrissie Hynde, artists that Linda Ronstadt, stuff that I didn't get into this list, but that's not to really detract from them. These are albums that I have. I've listened to them pretty extensively and knew the artist growing up, and they were influential as I was growing up, or they've become kind of a favorite as of recently, within the last few years. In the case of Bonnie Rait, that is definitely one of those where I really just kind of came to know Bonnie Rait as an artist within the last few years. And I grew up, I was born in the 70s, I grew up in the 80s, and so the Bonnie Rait that I was exposed to was just a couple songs that she had on the radio, and again, as a teenager, it just wasn't my thing. It wasn't my cup of tea. And then as I got older and started kind of listening, man, this early Bonnie Raitt stuff from the 70s, she's got such a heavy blues influence. Great guitar player, great vocalist. Again, this isn't necessarily albums. This is more about the artist. But the album that I kind of go to is Streetlights. She's got 4 or 5 albums, probably more from the 70s, and we've got several of them, and we play them with regularity. But if you just want kind of a good bluesy, drinking coffee on a Sunday morning kind of stuff, you cannot go wrong with Bonnie Raitt. Number 2, Carly Simon. This is Best of Carly Simon. I kind of grew up, like I said, born in the 70s, and so I remember as a kid listening to Carly on the radio, stuff like You're So Vain, obviously, and songs that really kind of spoke to you, and songs that made you identified something with her songs inside of you, even as a kid. But like I said, I'm kind of moving progressively through the 70s and into the 80s. But number 2 on the list is definitely going to be Carly Simon. And by the way, I say number 2, but these aren't necessarily in any kind of 1 through 10 order. These are just 10. 10 that are great listens and were influential. Next one is really one of my favorites, and it's Heart. The Wilson sisters, Ann and Gretchen, and oh my gosh, I mean, is there girls out there that rock any harder than these two? Ann's voice, even to this day, it's still killer. Gretchen's got a great voice. Her guitar playing, obviously, but yeah, man, back in the '70s, songs like Barracuda, Magic Man, I don't think they get any heavier than those two songs. But you've got like Straight On, let's see, Dreamboat Annie, Crazy on You. I mean, Even It Up. It just Heartless. It just goes on and on and on. I'm a little bit more of a fan of the '70s Heart than I am of the '80s Heart. Although the '80s Heart really, you know, they have some good stuff. But there's a lot of videos on these girls even today. They do a version of Dog and Butterfly. I don't know where they did it at, but it's just the two of them. I think there's one acoustic guitar and their two voices, and it's just killer. It knocks you, it blows you away. But Heart, definitely one of my female favorites. Number 3, Diana Ross, or number 3, fourth album, Diana Ross. And Diana, you know, back in that kind of late '70s, mid to late '70s, kind of funk disco era, man, she was kind of the queen of it all. You know, of course, she played Dorothy in The Wiz. Michael Jackson was the Scarecrow. You younger gals and guys out there, if you've never watched The Wiz, you know, watch The Wiz. It's a takeoff off The Wizard of Oz, but it's really cool. And I'm not sure if Berry Gordy produced that, or I'm wanting to say like Berry Gordy produced it, who of course had Motown. But this early Diana stuff, back in the '70s, it's just, again, kind of funk, kind of disco. You could go either way. Love some Diana Ross. Another favorite of mine, I should have took well, this one's got plastic on it anyway, but another favorite of mine, Fleetwood Mac. Now, obviously, there's a lot of incarnations of Fleetwood Mac, but my favorite is with Lindsay, Stevie, and Christy as really they had, with that version of the band, they really had 3 lead singers. And Christy McVie and Stevie Nicks, I love both of them. I think their voices blend well together. I think both of their voices blend great with Lindsay's. But this particular Fleetwood Mac's Greatest Hits, I've owned this on vinyl. I've owned it on cassettes back in the '80s. I had multiple CDs and just played them over and over and over. You can put this CD in and just let it go. It's that good. I think there's also a couple live versions on this. But talk about 2 very influential female singers within one band: Stevie Nicks, Christy McVie. The next one, and I sometimes people make fun of me because I like some softer music out there, and I've got a couple albums that kind of stand out in particular. But one, this is Olivia Newton-John's Greatest Hits. Man, if you ever find this, just go ahead and buy it, because I think you'll really be surprised. Obviously, she was a beautiful girl. I think she's probably one of my first crushes back in like '76, '77, kind of when she first came on the scene. But this has Heart Attack, Magic's probably my favorite song by her. Physical, Hopelessly Devoted to You. That was from the movie Grease. You're the One I Want from Grease. Xanadu. But like I said, man, Magic. You put Magic on, and that is a great song even today. I put this on, and my wife's just like, oh, this is good. But yeah, Olivia Newton-John, kind of a surprise on the list, I think. Next one, and again, I should have pulled some of these out of the plastic. My albums that are in a little bit better condition, I don't keep all my albums in plastic, but I do keep some of the where the cover and everything's in real good shape. I keep those in plastic. But Blondie, and this is the best of Blondie. On this album, you got Heart of Glass, Tide is High, Rapture, One Way or Another, Call Me. But Blondie's kind of one of those. Back in about 1980, I would have been 8 or 9 years old, and I just remember hearing Blondie on the radio. Heart of Glass and I think Call Me, Rapture, obviously, but I remember hearing those songs just over and over, and they really struck a chord with me. Today we'll do some small events where we'll spin some stuff, and I can put Heart of Glass on with that kind of synth pop, kind of almost post disco. But just catching some of that disco beat, man, I can put Heart of Glass on, and all of a sudden the girls are on the floor. So again, Blondie, a big pick. This next one, another kind of a surprise, Barbra Streisand, and it's kind of one of those that this is guilty. This was actually 1980. It was Album of the Year. I can't remember what album it beat out. Maybe Michael Jackson's Off the Wall is what it beat out for Album of the Year. Which, you know, if you beat out Michael Jackson, even at that point in time, you're doing something. But this album, I think most of the songs were either written or co-written by the Bee Gees. And Woman in Love. Let's see. Guilty is a great song. Woman in Love. I can't recall the others on there, but if you're gonna grab a Streisand album, start with this one, I think. And because it was Album of the Year, there's a lot of them out there. You can usually pick these up for $1 to $3, and they're usually in pretty good condition because even though there was a ton of them out there, they weren't listened to like over and over and over. So pick this album up. Start with this one. I've probably got 7 or 8 Barbra Streisand albums, and I like them all. Her voice is, obviously she's got great range. She's got a very distinctive voice, kind of like a Cher, who you know right away it's Barbra. And I admire that in artists. Artists that kind of, you know, they stay within the genre that they're playing in, but they have a sound or a voice that's all their own. So that's Barbra Streisand. Last two, we're down to the last two. Probably, in my opinion, this next one, probably for the last 50 years, I'm going to say she's kind of the queen of pop music, and that's Madonna. Man, you give me Madonna from 82 through 82, 83 through 94, 95. I just don't think you can go wrong. This is her first album. Probably you recognize just about every song on here. Lucky Star, Borderline, Burning Up, Holiday, but Everybody. But Madonna, just again, very distinctive voice. Kind of a, you know, obviously it was that synth pop, especially this early. But I think for the last 50 years, she probably stands on top of the pile in terms of being an artist and how strong she is and just producing great music and still producing music today. Which, by the way, a lot of these artists that I'm mentioning, they're still out there producing music today. We saw Bonnie Rait about a year ago. Heart, I know they're still out there doing it. Madonna, you're still hearing stuff from her. Blondie, you're starting to hear stuff from them again. So yeah, and I say Blondie. Obviously, Blondie's the name of the band. I'm gonna backtrack on it. Deborah Harry, since we're actually talking about females, Deborah Harry is kind of, the band is Blondie. Deborah Harry is the singer. So just wanted to make that clarification there. Last but not least, another one that in the mid 80s to mid 90s, Janet Jackson. This was probably her most popular album, which is Control, right? Yeah, Janet Jackson's Control. Nasty, What Have You Done For Me Lately, Pleasure Principle, When I Think of You, Let's Wait a While. I mean, there's a bunch of hits on this album. And, you know, there was a point, you know, obviously Michael was the king of pop. We know him as the king of pop. But I think there was probably a point, probably in the late 90s to the late 80s into the early 90s, where I think Janet probably actually eclipsed him in terms of popularity. She had a run there where she was on top, and I think this was probably her most successful album, and also probably her probably the best. I'm sorry, I hear something going on out there. Probably the best in terms of musicality, but great album. Also, when they did that collaboration, and I think it was probably around 94, 95, it was her and Michael, and I think it was called Scream. Man, what a great video, and they were both just incredible in that video. And that didn't get the accolades that I think it really deserved. But that's it, guys. The top 10. I'm about 16 minutes right now, so I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to try to do a couple of these a week, 2 or 3 of them, and put down in the comments. Obviously, I don't expect to have too many comments on this one, but put down in the comments stuff you might like to see reviewed, or stuff that was talked about. Again, these are 10 that I kind of picked out. I mentioned some a little bit earlier. Carole King is another one, going into the 90s, like Dolores O'Riordan, of the Cranberries. So it certainly isn't a snub on those other great female artists, because there's a lot of them out there. But that's our top 10. This is Classic Music Machine, and go ahead and subscribe. Start watching our videos. Thanks, guys.